back to my channel. Today I have my what I read for January. So I'm going to talk about all of the books that I read in January of 2021. If you like these types of videos, please give this a big thumbs up. Also subscribe to my channel to look forward to more of these. So the way I'm going to do this, I know a lot of booktubers do they have their to be read list, the books that they plan to read for the month, and then at the end of the month they have the books that they actually read. Well, I actually have a to be read list, and so far I've actually been sticking to this list. So I think that would be a little repetitive for me to say, hey, this is what I plan to read, and then this is what I read, when they're pretty much going to be the exact same list, because I'm good at setting goals for myself and sticking to them. So I've been keeping my list in here, and I have things planned up to the end of the year. Some of them have a whole bunch of books, some of them just have a few. It depends on what's coming out. And I'm also a mood reader, so I don't want to create a list too far ahead and then not be able to stick to it. So I'm trying to keep the planning to a minimum, but I'm still sticking to that list. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put the upcoming months, the next 2 months. So this is my February and March TBR list. And I'm also going to put in the credits the next month's to be read list. That way you're still seeing what I'm going to read, but it's not repetitive by seeing 2 videos in the same month with the same books. So now I'm going to go over the books I read in January, and I'm going to start with the one that I finished first, going to the last one that I read. So the first book I read is actually an ebook. So if it's an ebook, I'm going to pop the cover of the book up here. And if it's a physical book, I actually have my books this time. I haven't taken them to my parents' house yet, so they will be held up. So the first book was the Jane Austen Society. If you watched my every book I read in 2020, you will know that it was a book I thought I might finish in 2020, but I didn't actually finish it. So it was the first book that I completed in 2021, and this is about a group of people who, even the struggles and the difficulties in their life, they come together from their love of Jane Austen to want to purchase this cottage owned by the Knightley family to create a museum with her, or a museum for her, so that people could come and see the cottage where she lived at for a portion of her life. And also they want to purchase jewelry she wore, or desks that she wrote at, books that she owned or might have read. And so that's what the book is essentially about, is this society that they created and the individual people and why they love Jane Austen. So if you're a Jane Austen fan, you will love this book. I am a huge fan of Jane Austen's the movies made off of her books, but I'm not a love of Jane Austen's writing. I'm trying to get there. I have more books of hers planned to read this year because I know how many people love her, and I really want to give her a solid chance. So I finished that book first. The next book that I finished reading was Slingshot by Mercedes Helwin. I actually got one from the Goodreads Goodreads First Reads Win. I got a advanced readers edition that I won. Oh, it comes out in April. This book actually comes out in April of 2021. This is about a girl who has a crush on her teacher, and she thinks it's mutual, but obviously it's not. So she's at this private school where they pretty much let anyone in. So be forewarned, this is a young adult novel, but there's a lot of, I would say, unnecessarily foul language in it. And I don't really think kids at a private school would be able to do act and do the things that they do. So I didn't feel, because I went to private school. Of course, I went to a Christian private school, not just a generalized private school. But this type of behavior would not have been tolerated. They would have been kicked out. So I will say I didn't find it very believable with the way the characters are acting. But that being said, the girl then ends up saving this new boy with her slingshot. And they strike up this friendship, and they kind of like fall in love. And then, of course, drama happens. They hurt each other. There's misunderstandings. And it was an enjoyable read. I did really enjoy it. I did give it, let's see, I actually got the Book Lovers Journal, and so I've been keeping like track of like my opinions and everything. I gave it a 3-star. So this book, I gave it a 3 stars. So I did enjoy it. I just didn't find it very believable, in my opinion. The next book I read was Roar by Cara Carmack. And this was also a Goodreads First Reads win. And I think I won this back in 2019. So it took me a while to get through this book. I think the idea for this is really good, but the writing I don't think really resonated with me. I'm going to finish the series, but it was a little tedious to get through. Like, starting off, there's like this steamy scene, and I was like, oh, heart palpitations. And then like after that, it wasn't as steamy, it wasn't as exciting. But this, Aurora is the princess of Pavon. Pavon? P-A-V-A-N. And all of the royalty before her has had this stormling magic. Like, there's these storms that come and like terrorize the cities, and the royalty are there to protect the citizens and kind of like harness the storm, like control the storm, which is a really interesting magic system. Well, Aurora does not have any stormling magic, so she's kind of been hidden away her whole life. And her mom is like, Aurora's gonna have to take over soon, she's not gonna be able to protect our people, so we need to find someone to marry her off to, pretty much, who can protect our city. So they end up, her and the prince, so she gets betrothed to Cassius, who is, I think, the second son of like this other nation who's really powerful, and they have really strong like storm magic. And she's not happy about this arrangement. She's afraid, you know, she doesn't like to lie about it. Well, when I first read this, I kind of got like Aladdin vibes, because she kind of reminded me of Jasmine, like stuck up in this castle, and she finally escapes to this marketplace, and she meets this group of, they're people who go around and they like capture storms, and then they sell them. They're storm chasers. That's what they are. They're storm chasers, but like literally go after storms to like capture them, and then they sell them because like the storms have magical abilities. She meets this guy named Locke, and they kind of butt heads at first, and then she gets this idea that she is actually going to join these storm chasers, run away, and learn to try to find her stormling magic. And so it's really good. I enjoyed it, but yet again, I just think the writing style wasn't for me. But I'm still going to continue it because I do like the characters. The characters are very interesting. So then there was this was it Penguin Books? One of the book publishing companies was re-releasing the Graceling Fire and Bitter Blue books. And they were like having a readathon in like anticipation of the new Winterkeep book. And I did not get the new covers because I had already read Graceling like years ago, and I have that cover. And then I had Fire and Bitter Blue already that I hadn't read. So I didn't reread Graceling, but I did read Fire and Bitter Blue. And if you watch BookTubers, you've probably heard all about these books already. But Fire is about Fire, who is in the Dells. She lives in the Dells, and she is the last, like, monster. There's, like, animal monsters, and then there's human monsters, and she is the last, like, human monster. And she's got bright red hair and really striking eyes, and she is able to control people's minds. Well, she ends up there's these people who are coming and like attacking where her and where she's living, and she ends up traveling to the main like city where the king lives, and there's kind of some bad blood because her dad was like evil. Like usually monsters are evil, they just kind of do whatever they want that works for them, so people are kind of prejudiced against her and assume that she's also evil, and she ends up learning how to use her like mind reading, mind control powers to help the king and the prince and kind of like stop a war that's brewing. So it was really good. It can be read as a standalone. It's also a companion to Graceling and Bitterblue. So I also read Bitterblue, and this is about Bitterblue. She is the princess of Monsien, and she is kind of being kept in the dark about like what really happened when her father was in charge, which her father is in this book heads up. He's also in Graceling. He's kind of like, he's a bad guy. He's the bad guy. So there's things going on. She thinks that her people are able to read when the majority of them are not. There's people getting killed for trying to like help people to read, or if they're trying to discover what happened in the past, they're like being murdered. And it's about her like really coming into her power and realizing like that she's the queen and she needs to take control of her kingdom, and that her kingdom needs to heal from everything that her father did. And fire does show up near the end, and also Katniss, who's the main character of Graceling, is in this a lot, along with some royalty from some other kingdoms that you will, if you read Graceling, would have read about. So I enjoyed this book. I'm looking forward to Winterkeep. I believe I'm planning on reading that in March. I was planning on February, but then things happened and my TBR list got shifted around. So, but yes, this is a really good series. I know when I read Graceling, I wasn't like super in love with it. Like I wasn't like, this is the most amazing book. But they are very enjoyable, and they are like a good introduction to fantasy. They're very easy to read, they flow, like the writing is really good. I will say that, the writing is very good in these books. Then I read Legendborn, which this is a lot of people were comparing it to the Mortal Instruments series, which I can kind of see that, but the Mortal Instruments series is my favorite, and I don't think it has a similar vibe, but I don't think it really compares. So this is about Bree, whose mom recently died in a car accident. And she applied for this program at UNC. And her mom kind of had a fight about it, about her applying and actually getting like accepted into the program before her mom got into this car wreck. So she's, very upset about what happened. Not only because she lost her mom, but because she died tragically before they could make amends. And her mom is actually a alumni of UNC, so she's kind of also confused why her mom doesn't want her to go to UNC and do like this early entry program because she's in high school. Well, mom dies. She ends up going to UNC and finds out about this secret society that is like steeped in the Arthurian legend. And she feels like there's something about that society that is connected with her mom's death. So she makes friends with Nick, who is very important in the society, but he's kind of like turned his shoulder and doesn't want anything to do with the society. But because of her, he's kind of like forced into rejoining. And it's kind of like, it's a mystery fantasy, but then just, it's also kind of romantic too. So it's very enjoyable. I really liked it, but I wouldn't necessarily compare it to the Mortal Instruments series. But it's good. And it was also the ending of the first book. I kind of, like the twist, I kind of saw it coming. I'm like, okay, that's not really surprising to me. And there's also 2 different types of like magic systems in it too, which I found interesting. And she has both of them. Hint, hint. Spoiler without a spoiler. Then I read Midnight Sun. I laugh because I know a lot of people who grew up being Twilight fans are now like, oh, Twilight, it's so old. And it's just like, it is, but I will be a Twilight heart my entire life. I was Team Jacob. Go Team Jacob. So this book, because it's from Edward's point of view, and like, it's about Edward and how he saw the first book, Twilight, and the events that happened. This was a chore to get through. I actually bought this as soon as it came out. I started reading it as soon as it came out. And I just... I wasn't thrilled. I didn't think it was amazing. And yeah, I mean, I do like that the covers are still kind of following the same theme. And the book is actually bigger. And you do kind of get to see, like, what Edward goes and does when Bella's doing things, which is kind of nice. The third book kind of veers away the most. There's, like, something that's talked about that will happen that doesn't actually happen in the book. And then there's kind of, I would say, an important main side character that isn't even in the third movie, which kind of upset me a little bit. But the first and second movies are pretty true to the book. So... love this series. I highly recommend it. It is so good. So good. I love it. Probably one of my favorite reads for January. Or, yeah, actually might be my favorite read. Because I just love it. And then the last book I read was The City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty. I don't know if I said that right or not. But anyway. So this, I'm torn about this because I love the idea. I think part of the problem is with this book, it's very much building up. It's creating the world. It's introducing the characters. It is building up to the second and third books. This is a trilogy it is a complete trilogy. But you have Nari, who is kind of like this, she can sense like what makes people, like what is ailing them. And she can also heal people for some things. But sometimes, you know, people come to her that aren't actually sick and she, like, cons them into money. We actually are introduced to her because she has, like, this wealthy guy with his brother that show up. He thinks that he's dying because he's sick. He's actually just, I guess, super stressed out or something. But she tells him that he has to do all these things and he has to take his whole family and leave his house so that... to, like, cleanse or whatever. And her plan is to go and, like, rob him while he's gone. So she's a healer, but also she's like a con artist. And she's doing one of her cons later that day where she like does this ceremony and they're basically trying to... There's this world is surrounded where there's like the belief, or there is jinn, like genies, and there's different types. And it is believed that this girl is possessed by a jinn, so she's doing this ceremony to like cleanse the girl of this jinn that's in her, and she accidentally ends up summoning Dara, who is an Afshin who's from Davabad, and he's like thousands of years old. And then these Ifrit, who are kind of like bad jinn, like are after them. And so they're like traveling through the desert on a magic carpet, which is kind of cool, to get to Davabad, which is where all the jinn now resides. And it comes out that she is actually a jinn herself, and she is possibly the daughter of this very popular Nahid healer, who her and her brother were murdered like 20 years ago, and they thought all the Nahid were dead. And she's like the last remaining one. And this is very like a political fantasy. Like you have the Quatanis is like the ruling family right now. And then you have like people who are half jinn, half human, and they're like looked upon as lesser than. And the Afshin, who are basically like, they're like the genies you read about in the lamp. They can actually be controlled by human masters they're basically slaves. They're slaves to humans. And they're kind of like feared because they're super powerful. So Dara is one of these slaves, but he's revered because he actually went and like killed all these people during this like war where the Quatanists like took over. And then there's the king of the Quatanists, and then there's Matenter, who's the first prince who's going to take over. And then there is Ali, who is the second son, who's supposed to be the Quaid and kind of like the protector of the king. Well, he is half Anli? I forget. But he's like very like obsessed with the human world, and he's very about gaining knowledge. And him and Nari kind of become friends because she wants to learn how to read, and he in turn like wants to learn about the human world. And it's just a lot of building up because there's like a big, like, I don't want to say it's a battle, but there's like an altercation at the end that leaves a lot of people injured, people like banished, things happen, and then the next book takes place like 5 years later. So I enjoyed it, but it was just because it was so much world building and explaining, and like it's building up. So I've already started the second book, The Kingdom of Copper, and it is more exciting because you already know who everyone is now. So it's following everyone. So if you haven't read this book, or if you plan on reading this series, just know the first book is kind of slow because it's building up to more. So it does get better. Stick with it. Yeah. Yes, that is everything that I read in January. Let me know if you've read any of these books, if you're now planning to read any of these books. You know, what were your thoughts on these books if you have read them? And I will see you next time. Bye-bye!